WiSP Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on the WiSP Sports Desk here, our weekly news program. This is Season 2, Episode 12. I'm Chris Stafford.
And I'm Nancy Gillen.
Well, Nancy, it's been another week of reading about cancelled events, the impact that this is slowly having on sport and the governing bodies and organisations and events. And so it goes on, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I think the top story, obviously, is the announcement since last week's show of the new dates for the Tokyo Olympic Games.
Yeah. Last week we knew that the games were going to be postponed, but we weren't quite sure when to. But we now know that the Olympic Games are going to be taking place from July the 23rd to August the 8th next year. And then the Paralympics will be following them and taking place on August the 24th August the 24th to September the 5th.
Now, this obviously has huge implications, doesn't it? I mean, I was thinking about the signage and, them having to change all the signage to 2021, but you were telling me that they're not going to do that. They're going to stick with 2020 to save themselves some money there. Yeah,
I think the idea behind it is to keep kind of everything the same. Save money so they don't have to rebrand. And then I also think there's kind of an idea behind it that, it will kind of show that despite everything that's happened and the fact that it was postponed, they still managed to hold the Olympics. So I think there's kind of a bit of that, symbolism going on there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would imagine that's important too, isn't it? Because there was just something special about Tokyo 2020, right?
Yeah, I think everyone was just saying it.
It has a ring to it.
Yeah, people were just saying it for so long. It'd just be weird, I think, to start calling it Tokyo 2021. It just wouldn't seem right.
And also, I hear that they are going to now include reference to the coronavirus in the opening ceremony. So they're going to have to make some changes there, but they've got plenty of time to do that too.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something that you can't really ignore. And, everyone knows that it has been postponed because of coronavirus, and this is something that the whole world is going through. So I think that, if when the Olympics finally do happen, it will be a celebration that we've managed to kind of come out of this. And yeah, I think it's quite a good idea that they're going to reference it in the ceremony.
And also what the story that they will be telling, what they know then will be obviously the full story of the impact of this coronavirus. And as we mentioned earlier, the impact that this is having on event organisers, on the organisers, the governing bodies themselves. And I was shocked. I had not seen this till I read it on your website about the USA Rugby, that they're actually filing for bankruptcy, and that Rugby Australia is reporting a financial deficit. So this is the kind of thing we may be hearing a lot more about, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. And we were saying that it's, obviously with all sporting events cancelled, there's no revenue in terms of kind of ticket income. And then I suppose broadcasting as well. Like broadcasting is the way that most federations and most events make their money. And obviously nothing is going out, so they're not getting broadcasting money, no advertising money. And yeah, I think, like you said, USA Rugby, Rugby Australia, Rugby Football Union, which is the English organisation, they've had to, I think their chief executive has had a 30% pay cut. And then all different sports as well. Like we're kind of getting stories through quite regularly now about organisations kind of putting in plans to deal with this or giving staff pay cuts or putting them on leave. So it's even when all this is over, I think this is definitely going to have kind of a long-lasting effect on the sporting landscape.
Yes, I said you mentioned the Rugby Football Union, and they said they were set to lose up to £50 million, which is about $62 million. that is huge, isn't it, for an organization that when at the end of the day, it is one national sport governing body. That's a huge chunk of change for them.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like I said, it's going to kind of be happening in every sport. And I think here as well, I think people are quite worried about the women's football teams because obviously, as we've seen kind of in recent years, sometimes the women's teams of bigger clubs are kind of sometimes a bit of an afterthought. So I think people are a bit worried that maybe clubs won't be getting the funding they need, or just the clubs themselves, especially in the Championship, which is the second league. The clubs themselves are quite low key anyway. So if they're a bit smaller and they're going to be hit a lot more by this, then their women's teams might just not be able to survive. So hopefully it won't be a case of kind of organisations kind of getting rid of women's sport and women's teams first. So hopefully they can kind of deal with it in a balanced way. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot to talk about even after we're through this pandemic.
And then, of course, the impact on the athletes themselves, and some of them are taking this quite badly if they, considered 2020 to be maybe their swan song, that there wasn't another Olympic Games in them, much less another championship. They may be thinking of retiring. So there is that too. But as we know, the virus is absolutely not discriminating. It can impact anybody of any age, it seems. There's been deaths, of even 12 and 13-year-olds. And we always think of the older population as being very, very vulnerable too. But you don't often think that a fit athlete is going to be as vulnerable. And yet you reported just today that the Hungarian swimming team there's a number of them on that team that have been impacted by this. They are tested positive.
Yeah, it seems like they've all been at a training camp together and tested positive for it. So a world champion, I'm not quite sure, I might not say her name correctly, is Boglarka Kapas. She's the 200-meter butterfly gold medalist in swimming, and she's revealed on Instagram today that she has tested positive for coronavirus, and then further 7 swimmers and 1 coach from the Hungarian national team have also tested positive. So like you said, even obviously those swimmers are going to be at the peak of physical fitness. They're it's not, like you said, it's not really discriminating against people. It's for them as well, I think they'll be impacted because even though they might scale down their training now the Olympics are taking place, they still won't be able to train properly for a while now because they might be feeling ill or whatever. So their careers are probably going to be impacted a bit by having it as well.
And we can't go through all of them here on the show, but there has been so many governing bodies, press releases that have dropped into our inbox now over the past several weeks now. It seems to be mounting, and of course it will continue, of the number of actual events that have been cancelled way into the future. Yeah,
it's starting to kind of get to, I think, like June, July, all the events are kind of getting cancelled now, and even August. I think it's quite a random event, but snow volleyball, I think in Argentina in August, that was one of the this summer, that was kind of one of the latest events I've seen. And then events are now having to be moved because of the Olympics being postponed. So I think, the athletics championships, which are taking place next year, and the swimming championships as well, they were both originally meant to be in 2021. And it's kind of almost impossible to have an Olympic Games and then a World Championships in 2 of the biggest Olympic sports as well. So nothing's been decided on that yet, but they're surely going to have to move. But then obviously the year after that, in 2022, you've got the Commonwealth Games. You have quite a lot of continental games kind of in 2023. So the sporting calendar is just so jam-packed. So things are getting cancelled now because of coronavirus, and then it's almost going to be impossible to reschedule them next year without events then being moved again. So I really don't envy people in charge of rearranging events at the moment.
And surfing, as we know, was going to be a new Olympic sport, even though it wasn't going to be held in Tokyo. It was going to be a long way away, as we reported earlier on the show. This, too, has cancelled some major events. Yeah,
I was going to be going to the World Surfing Games, which were in El Salvador, and that was meant to be this time next month. And I think it shows how quickly this has happened, that only 3-4 weeks ago, I thought I was still going to be going to that. Obviously, I'm not, because you can't even leave your house now anymore, let alone the country. So that was pushed back to June, and then it's now been kind of postponed indefinitely. They're kind of hoping for the second half of the year maybe to hold that, but that was meant to be a qualifier for the Olympics. And I did actually speak to the surfing president just after they postponed the games as well, and kind of asked him how he was feeling, because obviously there might be a bit of frustration there, seeing as surfing was meant to be making its Olympic debut this summer. But yeah, he said there was kind of no frustration really, and that the most important thing was obviously the safety of everyone, and it was a wise decision to move the Olympics. So I think everyone's in agreement, but there's just a lot of reorganising and logistics coming up for everyone.
And with there not being any competitions, we've noticed that some sports have actually announced that they're freezing the world rankings. Now, I read the Professional Squash Association, the PSI, they announced that they will be frozen during the ongoing suspension of the PSA Tour due to the global outbreak of COVID-19. And also you have the story of Zambia FIFA World Rankings too.
Yeah, that's I don't think they're going to be updated next year. Because, I think the next thing is going to be June. So obviously no one's going to be playing football in that time. But this is kind of the last update from the She Believes Cup. So this is actually using sport that has happened. So it's kind of quite refreshing to write that story. But yeah, it was quite good news for Zambia, because they qualified for the Olympic Games, and then in doing so they moved up 6 places, so they're now in 100th place. But kind of apart from that, everything pretty much stayed the same. Like the US stayed at the top, Germany in second, so France in third, and then I think it's Britain in fourth, or England in fourth. So yeah, that kind of was the final change, but I imagine that's going to stay the same now, because as we all know, there's no football happening at the moment.
Yeah, and really not a lot of other stories to report other than the impact this is having. There's been some changes in administration too. We noticed you had the story there of of Irma, what is her name? Irma Testa. She's becoming the new AIBA Athletes Commission Vice Chair.
Yeah, so the Athletes Commission is I was quite surprised to see that it was a new organisation, because most federations do have Athletes Commissions. But I think it's kind of part of their whole reform. Like boxing have been in quite a lot of trouble and had their Olympic recognition stripped. They are not actually organising the Olympic boxing competition when it finally comes around. So they're kind of trying to reform and make it, improve their governance. So she technically is the first vice chair. So she's a European champion in the featherweight division. So yeah, that's quite good news that she's kind of representing female boxers really in the Boxing Federation. And then there was another story as well about the WADA, which is the World Anti-Doping Agency. They also elected new people onto their athletes committee. And 12-time Paralympic medalist Chelsey Gottell, she has been added onto that as well. So yeah, even though sport isn't happening, we're still kind of getting some female representation on bodies, which is always good as well.
Yeah, there's been some turnover there, isn't there? So some athletes like, the Hayley Wickenheiser, the Canadian hockey player, the American paracyclist Greta Niemann-Haas, and so on. So it's a rotation, isn't it? So some of them are leaving, and then we've got these new people coming on. So all of this is happening in the background, gives the athletes something to think about. They're also getting very creative with their workout programs. I saw today that There was an ice skater who laid down a challenge to the Canadian wrestler Erica Wiebe to get dressed upside down. So they have to stand on the hands against the wall. And she did it, but Erica tried it. She got one leg in her leggings and then fell actually quite heavily the other when she tried to get her other leg in. But I did see someone else, and I can't remember who it was, who did do it very successfully too. Actually put a top on. That's a lot easier. I couldn't begin to put my leggings on upside down against the wall. I can't even do a handstand for any length of time. Can you?
No, I can't. Definitely not.
They're getting very imaginative for some of these challenges. And Liz Wardley is one to follow, the Australian sailor, the offshore sailor. She is also a personal trainer now. She trained to do that in the last couple of years, I think it was. And she works out quite intensely every day. And so when I saw some other athlete, again, I can't remember who it was, but they were doing push-ups with one hand each on a beer can, and their feet and 1 foot on a beer can, so could they cross their legs?
Gosh.
And they were doing push-ups. So I sent that to Liz and I said, okay, what's your next trick? And so she said she was going to try that. So if you follow Liz Wardley on social media, on Instagram particularly, she posts her little workout sessions, and she's very strong and she gets very creative. I don't know if you remember a while ago that we had that plank challenge that went around on social media. Do you remember that, Nancy?
Yeah, I do. I do remember that, yeah.
Well, Liz took it one step further. She took it to various locations, on a paddleboard, on the boat, in totally different locations, different scenarios. And I can't remember. She did 20. I can't remember how many. 20 locations and 20 push-ups. In some really interesting locations. It was quite the challenge, but as usual, Liz rose to that challenge. So if anybody's got any stories about their workouts, their unusual workouts, we'd love to hear them. You can post them, of course, and tag us on social media at WiSP Sports. And don't forget to include Nancy as well, Nancy_Gillen. And of course, as always, you can watch or read, I should say, Nancy's blogs at InsideTheGames.biz. Now, you're still keeping pretty busy with all these backstories to the sport, even though there's no action, Nancy.
Yeah, really busy. Obviously, there's so much about the Olympics and kind of reaction. And in the weeks to come, I imagine there'll be a lot on how they're going to do the qualification process and venues and so on. So yeah, I do feel quite lucky because a lot of people have had to stop working. So I imagine this time would be quite boring, but yeah, luckily there's still a lot going on at the moment. So yeah, quite grateful for that. And it's obviously disappointing that the Olympics have been postponed, but a very interesting time to be a sports journalist, for sure.
Yes, we've become coronavirus journalists as well.
Yeah, we definitely have.
And if you want any suggestions as to how to cope with this isolation, I spoke to offshore sailor, record-breaking offshore sailor, that is Dee Kafari, the British sailor who has sailed a few times around the world, once in the opposite direction when she got lost. No, I'm kidding. She deliberately went the other way around. No, so she's very used to being alone out there for many, many days on time at any one time. And she's broken records doing that. And so she talked to me last week about how to cope, how to develop a routine. And, that there's ways mentally that you really have to deal with isolation. And so she had some great advice. So you can find that on a podcast from last week. And I hope you do subscribe to WiSP Sports because there's a lot of stories like that. And I've talked to other athletes as well as you can find. And we'll be talking to more athletes because they have more time now, Nancy, to talk to us, don't they? That's the one side of this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think athletes and a lot of the federations as well have kind of got less to do. So they seem to be producing somehow more news than ever. So yeah, everyone's kind of trying to keep busy. Yeah.
And I should announce we have a brand new show coming to your ears this week from Down Under. Our friends at Women's Sport Australia are partnering with us. There's going to be 2 co-hosts there. Em Smith and Georgina Mandel are going to be hosting that show. The first episode drops on Friday when they talk to Wallaroos player Emily Chancellor. That's a very interesting conversation. I really enjoyed that. So that will be in your ears on Friday. And so stay tuned for that. And also, we have some other news we're going to break to you in the next week or two. Some very exciting news coming our way in May. So starting in May. So stay tuned for that. And of course, subscribe to WiSP Sports on your podcast app. Nancy, what are you going to be doing then this week? Do you have any time to yourself?
So I've got the next 4 days off. Haven't really thought about it that much, really. The weather's going to be quite nice, so just try and get out in my garden and get some fresh air as much as possible, really.
And the bike challenge, I laid down the bike challenge. Yeah.
So I do have a bike, but it's a BMX, but that's fine. Obviously, you can still ride that, so should hopefully be getting out on that as well.
Okay, so we need to see photos of you out there. You have to get your parents to take some pictures of you preparing for Tokyo 2021.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm not sure maybe I will be able to qualify. So maybe I'll use this time to become an Olympic BMXer. It could happen.
It can happen. All right. Well, I don't everything is quite as fancy as a BMX, but I do have a hybrid bike, and it's actually a brand spanking new one. With far more gears than I really need. But anyway, it's great fun. I'm starting to get out on that, and I haven't been stopped or arrested yet for exercising. I live on the edge of a village, so we can get out pretty easily. So I'm either hiking or biking every day, and I think we all need that, don't we? We just need to keep moving.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good way to kind of keep busy and just kind of get the time going a bit quicker.
Yeah. Well, we'll be back next week with more news, not from the action of any sport anywhere in the world, sadly, but from the backstories, what's happening to keep sport going during this coronavirus pandemic. So until then, from Nancy and me, thanks for listening as always. Stay safe and don't forget to wash your hands.